Hello, in today's video I want to explain what Google Zero is. The term Google Zero was coined by Nilay Patel, the editor-in-chief of The Verge, which is an online tech news website. Any website or blog that has had any measure of success gathering an audience online probably has quite a few clicks coming in from Google search. With that in mind, Google Zero is the exact moment that Google search stops sending traffic to most third-party websites. To understand this hypothetical situation, we need to look at history. When Google started, it was just a search bar. You entered a search term and you got 10 blue links. Title of the page, little blurb, and you clicked on one of those links to get your information, access your content. However, over the years, Google has iterated on this basic idea of search and has added things called featured snippets. Featured snippets are things like, for example, if you search for a historical figure or a celebrity, you'll now often get a sort of card, an info card with some biographical information. That information is pulled from sources that Google deems to be reliable. Another example would be if you look for the weather, you'll get a weather summary at the top of the search results provided by Google. All of those things Google couldn't do originally. If you were looking for a calculator, you'd type in calculator, you go to a calculator website. In terms of web searches, while it seems that Google is helping users get to the information faster, it's worth also looking at this from a different perspective. And I agree that just typing in a basic mathematical operation is great if you get the result right away, instead of having to find a website that has an online calculator for you. However, if we look at it with perspective, you'll see that with every feature snippet, or with every time that Google creates a feature in search that presents the information right there and then in some form, it means that a type of website basically doesn't get that web traffic. Different types of websites in different parts of the web basically die out. You might not think that calculator websites are that great of a loss, or that weather.com doesn't need to exist, but it just keeps progressing, right? What about scientific information? What about political information or information about a celebrity? That type of information where, maybe it might help to have some more context or more detail is now being served by Google Snippets. The conclusion of this kind of integration of information straight into the search result page, instead of having to go to a third party to find the information, has kind of reached its peak with Google's recent launch of Google AI Overviews. I did a video about this and why I think they're a bad idea. It's this gradual grabbing of information and not passing traffic through to expert websites that leads to a moment like Google Zero. Now, Nilay Patel of The Verge argues that websites need to be prepared, that media websites like The Verge, which covers tech news, tech products, things like that, need to be prepared for this eventuality, that basically publishers, blogs, and websites have relied on Google for traffic for far too long. Google might reorganize information and add further features to search that discourage users from clicking through and getting their information from a non-Google source. And the reality is that right now, no one has an actual answer as to what comes after Google for websites or blogs that were getting a lot of traffic from Google. People talk about building community and subscriptions and all these things, but there's no real answers. But I think it's, again, worth having a look at history, and specifically at search history. Google emerged in the late 90s as a transformative web experience. But why is that? Well, in the 90s, as the web became mainstream, you had actually quite a variety of different search engines. Yahoo was a big name, naturally, but by no means the dominant force. There were other names like AltaVista, Excite, Lycos, Ask Jeeves. Some of these you might know, some of these you might not know. And then you had services like AOL, MSN. So as web search developed, what these websites did was to go from being a search engine more to being like a portal. You'd basically go to AOL.com, maybe you'd want to use a search feature, but you'd have like the weather, you'd have some news, you'd have maybe the stocks. And the reality was that it was a lot of visual clutter. It meant that it was distracting. At the same time, the actual search features of these earlier search engines were not actually that accurate. Often they kind of took you to the broad category of what you were searching for, but it wasn't that precise. So when Google came along, it wasn't just the fact that it was definitely a technological leap in terms of search approach, but also that the homepage was just a search bar with 2 buttons, no clutter. And Google has maintained that pretty much to today. But I think that Google has missed a trick here, which is what drew people to Google originally was the lack of clutter. But instead of putting the clutter on the homepage, Google is cluttering its search results with these info cards, with AI overviews, with product cards, with questions people also asked. All these things interrupt the flow of search results. So in this video, I kind of want to posit a different type of Google Zero. Because Google Zero is something that's relevant. Well, first of all, it was coined by an editor-in-chief of a tech website, but it's really relevant to web publishers, to website owners. I like to think of Google Zero as a personal choice, which means switching away from Google search. And Google Zero is a goal. I see where Google is headed in terms of how it organizes the world's information. I'm paraphrasing here their mission statement, right? To organize the world's information. That's kind of what they claim to want to do. And their approach is, we'll handle it, we'll choose the information that we present to you, and you'll view that information and get that information through the search result pages that we present to you, versus you choosing to visit certain websites to get the information that you want. So, for me, Google Zero is basically reducing my reliance on Google when looking for information. The funny thing is that yes, Google is the dominant search engine by 2 country miles. They have a search monopoly, essentially. They're not the only search engine. There are other search engines out there. Personally, and this is not an endorsement on them in any way, I've switched to Ecosia because they were one of the default search options on my browser. I made this kind of change a couple of weeks ago, and I'm happy to report that while I haven't completely removed Google from my online diet, probably out of 10 times, I now go to Google once or twice. I found that for most searches, Ecosia is good enough. And I believe that I've also tried Startpage and DuckDuckGo, and I believe that they provide similar performance. Ecosia, my understanding is that it's based on the Bing search engine, so its search results are probably quite similar to Bing. But I found that, 8 or 9 times out of 10, it does the job. And the nice thing is that the experience is much less cluttered. I just mostly have links, and then there are other tabs in case I want to access other features. In fact, it also has an AI chat, but it's in a different tab. If I don't need to use it, which the majority of the time I don't, as opposed to Google, which forces me to get information the way that their user interface designers have dictated. That is not something that I'm on board with. And this is why I'm trying to attain my own version of Google Zero, which basically means zero reliance on Google for online search. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and until next time.